Welcome back, troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. To continue on with our Halloween theme of strange, bizarre guitars, let's check this guy out right here. An original 1957 Gibson Les Paul with, let's count it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 knobs and a huge switch. Let's talk about this thing. Okay, so occasionally people will Photoshop mock these things up of like a Les Paul with just a whole bunch of switches and knobs on it, but this thing is 1000% real. And as far as vintage Gibsons go, this is something that actually catches my attention because I like the weird oddball guitars and limited editions. And unfortunately, 50s Gibsons, they don't really have that since they were just kind of starting out and figuring out what they're doing with the solid body guitar anyways. So that's why something like this gets me excited, an original 1952 unbound with the screws and the bridge P90, things like that. But what is the story on this weird Les Paul Custom? Well, first off, at its heart, it's a first-year PAF Les Paul Custom. And looking at the serial number, it looks like it's a later 57, so that would match up with these pickups as well. They would normally have 3 pickups, so that's nothing too special. The original Customs don't actually have maple tops, they're mahogany. They've got the ebony fretboards with the standard mahogany neck as well. But in order to understand the electronics of this one, we actually need to look to a model that was first introduced in 1949. The ES5 Switchmaster. That's where all of this stuff came from here. So a little bit of history behind this particular model. In 1949, this was the first commercially available 3 pickup guitar. It predates the Epiphone Zephyr, way before any Stratocasters or anything. So from a historical standpoint, this is actually quite the trailblazer here on this jazz archtop guitar. But when it was first introduced, it had this unique layout. Now this is a volume control for each and every single individual pickup, and then you get a Mastertone up here on the bout. And this layout existed for about 6 years. Until in 1955, we switched over to the one that we're talking about today. A lot of the jazz guys that were playing these things, they kind of felt they were a bit fiddly. They wanted an easier way to get to each pickup selection if they wanted to change it at all. So Gibson came out with this. It looks a little bit ridiculous, kind of reminds me of like a cow or something. You got the udders down here, but that's individual volumes and tones for each pickup. So that's a whole bunch of different options. But in order to make the guitar a little bit more simple, they added this long switch. And the way that that thing functioned is it selected each pickup individually, and then the 4th position was all of them on at the same time. So technically, if you switch it to the all position, you can still have all the blending capabilities. Because that's what made the original design so unique. You could have like 25% neck, 75% middle, and like 30% bridge. You could just play with the pots and get so many different tonal capabilities out of these things. So the switch simplified it and made it more complex depending on what you needed out of this instrument. However, in 1957, once again, they took it a step further with the introduction of the PAF humbuckers. So no more P90s on this thing. And the humbuckers, they've got a very certain vibe to this thing that looks really cool. But at the same time, the dog-ear P90s look pretty sweet. But you can get these in both configurations. And the next change for these guys didn't happen until '61 when they introduced the Florentine cutaway. To be honest, I think this is the first time I've ever actually looked one of these things up. The Florentine cutaway looks sweet. I always thought the switch looked a little bit weird and out of place right there on the upper bout. But for some reason, if you chop away all that extra stuff, it gives it a more modern look. I actually really dig that. Yeah, I think I found a new favorite here. And this cherry sunburst color was also introduced as the new standard, but this iteration did not last very long. The model was discontinued in 1962. But now back to this guy that we're talking today. You can see that exact same switch we were just talking about, but instead of being mounted horizontally, they've got it diagonal, which honestly, it adds to the whole vibe of this guitar of being strange, instead of just being an ES5 ripoff. Had it been straight across, I probably wouldn't like it as much. Even though it doesn't necessarily look as aesthetically pleasing. But this one being a 1957 is kind of cool. That some jazz archtop guy that was probably switching over to electric guitars, he's like, okay, I like what you guys are doing here that's new for 57 on the ES5s. Can you put it on a Les Paul Custom for me? And this is what they came up with. It definitely looks very crowded. I mean, your knobs are so close to your tailpiece right there. It's Might not be the most comfortable to use, but it looks like they've got the same positions, so you can select between just the neck, just the middle, just the bridge, and again, all 3 pickups on at the same time with all those combinations that we were just talking about. So you might be curious, did they ever do the original ES5 layout? Yes, this is the Mickey Baker Les Paul Custom. I've actually reviewed and demoed one of those, simply because they reissued them in the late 90s to the early 2000s. They call this the Mickey Baker Mastertone because, once again, you get the Mastertone right here, and then the 3 individual volumes. And if they've done the Mickey Bakers, I think we certainly need some sort of a reissue on this one because it's too goofy not to. Why not have the switch positions that'd be easier for me to demo and still have that on a Les Paul Custom? We need to have this thing reissued because it's just so beautiful. Short of that, I would have to buy this original one, and I'm not sure how many or if there's any more of these that were ever made. This thing has just aged so beautifully. It's definitely been played, it's been worn in, but it's not like too heavily trashed that I wouldn't want to buy it. I mean, sure, the buckle rash on the back is a bit of a bummer, but take a look at this. I really want to open that control cavity and see what's inside, and thankfully it looks like we do have some photos down here. But as far as replaced parts, it looks like the original waffle backs have been replaced with Grovers. Kind of unfortunate for the look of the guitar, but good for the tuning stability of it. But there it is, in all its glory. That's what it looks like all wired up. Man, I wouldn't want to do that wiring job. But what's kind of peculiar, at least from this photo angle, it appears there's nothing actually even attached to that pot. Clearly, you've got the ground wire, but they must have just attached this wire just barely on the side there. But it looks like they did a fantastic job soldering and wiring all that up, so cool. And this is something I find really interesting as well. I don't think this is an aftermarket hack job, but then again, at the same time, I guess it could be. But it looks like they just took a regular Les Paul off the production line and just kind of chopped it up there in order to fit that big long switch in there. But what a cool, strange guitar. Now, how much is this thing? Only $110,000. I mean, let's put this into perspective here. Original Black Beauty Les Paul Customs are not as expensive as people think. Like, right here today, you can buy a really clean 1959 Les Paul Custom, and they're asking $80,000. These are nowhere near as expensive as the 1959 Burst. Anywhere between, what, $180,000 up to $400,000, depending on the top and provenance. Oh my goodness. Yep, that's fretless wonder frets. You can just tell by looking at it. They're hardly even there. But this one's just your regular 3-pickup PAF without the additional knobs. However, the latest edition of the Vintage Price Guide actually puts the 57 to 61 stop tail versions anywhere between $48,000 to $63,000. So what I'm saying here is, for this being a custom ordered weird one-off guitar in the 50s, I really don't think their price was that atrocious, given the circumstance. And who knows what it actually ended up selling for. Maybe somebody was able to get it for about $80,000. Because as a collection piece, this thing is just, priceless. Let's go ahead and check out their description here. Unfortunately, there's pretty much absolutely no description. They just say, original condition, no breaks, cracks, or repairs. Changed tuners, everything we saw. Okay, that was a little bit lackluster. I was hoping for some sort of a story as to who custom ordered it and why. I guess let's see if we can find any other instances of this. Yeah, it's not looking like it, so I guess I would want to know more about the provenance and history of it just to make sure it's not just a regular hacked up Les Paul Custom, to be 100% sure. Because usually guitars like these have pretty good stories behind them. But hey, if that's not enough switches and knobs for you, check out this guy. That is very clearly a Photoshop job. But who wouldn't want the double-barred Bigsby? I think that should be a real thing. Not very practical, but hey, why not? So for our playing demo today, let's go ahead and check out an original ES5 Switchmaster. The only question left, would you rock this strange Les Paul Black Beauty or not? Leave your answer down in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care.